This is one of many adult education offerings that we have for the year. Please, if you don't have a yellow flyer, please take one. It has a list of all of the other offerings for the year, ranging from Talmud to Torah to Mishnah to Hebrew. The list goes on. You can read it. Now, in terms of today's debate, let's introduce our speakers, our moderator, as well as the speakers representing Bush and Kerry. I'll start by introducing Loed Marcus. She's a woman sitting in the middle. Lori is a columnist and radio talk show host in the Philadelphia area. She is a graduate of Harvard Law School, was chair of the Women's Law Association, and a founding board member of the Harvard Civil Liberties Union. She is currently the president of the Philadelphia district of ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, and her most prominent attribute is that she is a new member of the Suburban Jewish Community Center, B'nai Aaron. I was going to say we'll start on the left, but I should probably say we'll start on the right.
My right.
This is Len Feldman, to my right. Len is a trial attorney who works in Philadelphia for the law firm Brookman, Rosenberg, Brown, and Sandler. Len joined AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, as a teenager and has been involved in pro-Israel advocacy and Jewish communal organizations ever since. Len is a proud member of the board of directors of the Philadelphia chapter of Republican Jewish Coalition, RJC. It's a national grassroots organization of Jewish Republicans. Now, Len recently came back from Israel on a very special trip. He accompanied U.S. Congressman Jim Gerlach, Republican from the 6th District of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on an RJC-sponsored trip to Israel, and they met, Len as well as Congressman Gerlach, met with Prime Ministers Netanyahu and former Prime Ministers Netanyahu and Peres, and also I think he spent some time dodging rockets in Gaza. Yes? Len is a member of Temple Beth Hillel, Beth El, and Wynwood, lives in Bella Cynwyd with his wife Amy, and 3 young children. Welcome to Len. To my left, Daniel Loeb, Dr. Daniel Elliott Loeb. Never get your middle name. Dr. Dan Loeb is a mathematician with a wide range of experiences in academia and in industry. He has a PhD in mathematics from MIT, and Dan Loeb's research took him to the Université de Paris and Université de Bordeaux, where he published some groundbreaking research on the mathematics of voting. So for those of you who haven't yet read these articles, perhaps you should. The fundamental theorem of voting schemes and voting fairly. Dan met his wife, Ellen, in Israel, and they were married in France. They settled in the Philadelphia area upon their return to the U.S. in 1996. And since then, Dan has been developing mathematical models for Susquehanna Investment Group in Bala Cynwyd. Dan and Helen have, where are your children? They're there. 3 children, Gabby, Jonathan, and Benjamin. And as a concerned citizen, Dr. Daniel Loeb is an outspoken advocate of Senator John Kerry. Welcome to Dan Loeb. Before we do the official coin flip to determine who will speak first, Dan or Len, I just wanted to read to you a paragraph that I found in the New Yorker magazine. This is an expansion of the rules of engagement for political debate for presidential candidates or their representatives. Okay. Just to give you an idea, some of the paragraphs, which I will not be reading, there are paragraphs on dress, on bodily fluids perspiration, on spousal references, and on Vietnam, but I won't read those out loud. I will read out loud a paragraph on hand gestures. Italian, French, Latino, Bulgarian, or other ethnic style gestures intended to demean, impugn, or otherwise derogate opponents by casting aspersions on opponent's manhood, abilities as a lover, or cuckold status are prohibited. Standard American-style gestures meant to convey honest bewilderment, doubt, etc. shall be permitted. Candidates shall not point rotating index fingers at their own temples to imply that opponent is mentally deranged. Candidates shall at no time insert fingers in their own throats to signify urge to vomit. Candidates shall under no circumstances insert fingers into opponent's throat. Brad Miller, please come up. We're going to flip a coin. Heads for Len, tails for Dan. Whoever comes up will speak first.
At the Mississippi quarters, so the heads are going to have George on the front and Mississippi on the back.
Let me start by expressing my appreciation to Rabbi Lisa Malik, wherever she is, over there, for inviting us to participate in this discussion. And thanks to all of you who have come to inform yourselves as we're approaching an extremely important presidential election, which may determine the future of our nation, the state of Israel, and indeed the world. The Bush campaign is trying to sell us the idea that Bush is a rock of support for Israel. They are trying to convince you that you should vote for them, even if you disagree with Bush on a host of other issues. The undisputed facts, however, paint a different picture. The facts show that Bush is at best an inconsistent supporter of Israel. While Bush has done some things for Israel, this morning I will detail to you how George W. Bush has condemned Israel when it has gone after Hamas terrorists, how Bush has obstructed Israel building of the security fence, and how he has punished Israel for building that fence. In contrast, John Kerry, in word and in deed, is a stronger supporter of Israel. 10 years before Bush entered public life, Kerry was already making a name for himself as one of Israel's strongest supporters in the Senate. This isn't just my view. This is the view of the most pro-Israel organization out there, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. According to AIPAC, John Kerry has a perfect, unblemished 20-year voting record on Israel in the United States Senate, including some 60 pro-Israel votes and signatures on key congressional letters. He took a leadership role in co-sponsoring many of these efforts. When Kerry says he supports Israel, you can trust him. To achieve a 20-year, 100% pro-Israel voting record, you have to be there for Israel day after day, year after year, and not just on the popular votes. Here's one telling quote from just a few months ago. Israel should freeze settlement construction and not prejudice final negotiations with the placement of walls and fences. Who would say something like this? The speaker is George W. Bush. Yeah, I heard it. You can read these remarks for yourself on the White House website. And what's worse, to Bush, these weren't mere words intended for a European audience. Unfortunately, he was serious, and he immediately put his words into action. Upon his return from London, he summoned the representatives of the Israeli government, called them to the carpet for having constructed the security fence, and fined them to the tune of a $289 million deduction from U.S. loan guarantees that earlier administrations made to Israel. In other words, every shekel that Israel spent on the security fence to protect its citizens has been deducted from the loan guarantees. And this includes parts of the fence west of the so-called Green Line, which don't even touch so-called Palestinian land. In contrast, from day one, John Kerry has always supported the construction of the Israel security fence to stop terrorists from entering Israel. Unlike Bush, Kerry understands the security fence is an act of self-defense that Israel needs to defend itself. Kerry believes the security fence is a matter for Israel to decide. That on matters of vital security, these decisions should be Israel's to make. Kerry opposes this president's attempts to reduce U.S. loan guarantees to Eretz Yisrael in order to coerce Israeli policy. You see, Israel has a democratic decision-making process. On vital security matters, these decisions should be Israel's to make. Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and the other neocons don't have to live with the life or death consequences of those decisions. Israel's security must not be gambled away as a part of this administration's risky, ill-planned, and dangerous neocon vision for the Middle East. President Bush has also condemned Israel on numerous occasions when it has gone after Hamas terrorists. For example, when Israel targeted Hamas leaders Yassin and Ratissi in March, Bush said that he was, quote, deeply troubled. In stark contrast, Kerry was among the first to express support. As Kerry says, if the U.S. has a right to respond in Afghanistan to suicide bombers in New York City, and we do, then Israel has a right to respond to suicide bombers where they hide. Bush has demonstrated that he will say anything to any audience to please them. On one hand, he has spoken out against anti-Semitism. But last May, Bush shared a stage with Crown Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. The prince was speaking about the terrorist attacks in his own country, Saudi Arabia. The prince blamed, quote, the Zionists for these attacks. Bush was standing there, right next to him. He didn't condemn that disgusting comment then, and he hasn't since. Bush has failed to consistently support Israel in the UN. Last May, for example, when Arab nations sponsored a resolution condemning Israel, Bush shocked Jews around the world by not vetoing this resolution. Bush ordered our UN representative to abstain, as we almost never do. And because of this, the anti-resolution passed in the Security Council 14-0. The Security Council, the only part of the UN can have binding resolutions. John Kerry has always believed that the U.S. must stand solidly behind Israel at the UN. He has stated that he would, quote, never hesitate to wield a U.S. veto on the Security Council in the face of anti-Israel, anti-Zionist resolutions. In spring 2002, when Israel launched Operation Defensive Shield to root out terrorists in Jenin and elsewhere, Kerry co-sponsored a resolution in support of Israel, while the Bush administration called for an investigation by UN observers. I will speak more about why a vote for Kerry is a vote for Israel's security. But now let me turn to a few domestic issues in their relationship to Jewish values. George W. Bush does not share our values. In 1997, then Governor Bush signed a bill that allowed Texans to bring their guns into churches and synagogues. He signed another bill that proclaimed Jesus Day in Texas. Bush's inaugural speech, 2001, was sandwiched between an invocation and a closing prayer that were both made specifically in the name of Jesus. As one pastor proclaimed, Pastor Sean, Jesus Christ, the name that's above all other names. Even now, just recently, federal courts have determined that Bush has unconstitutionally hijacked the AmeriCorps program to endorse religious Christian schools. And Bush is currently planning to appoint Dr. W. David Hager to head an influential FDA panel on women's health policy. This in Hager's book, Stress in the Woman's Body, Hager emphasizes, quote, the restorative power of Jesus Christ. And he recommends that women relieve premenstrual symptoms with readings from the scripture. The list goes on, and I'll say more later. But don't take my word for it, and don't take Len's word for it either. Do your own research. I will put full details on my website. You know, there is potential conflict for American Jews between their domestic agenda, healthcare, reproductive rights, homeland security, the separation between church and state, assault weapon bans, and so on, and our support for Israel. Unfortunately, in this election, we need not be torn between two allegiances. This conflict resolves the same way along both axes. Kerry will offer Israel stronger support, more sincere support, and more consistent support. Thank you very much.
You might not know it from Dan's remarks, but America's at war. The reason I'm such a strong supporter of George Bush is that he gets it. He understands that there's one issue at stake in this election: the war. That is the primary issue at stake, and George Bush gets what's at stake. Just 9 days after 9/11, when America was permanently and profoundly damaged through that attack, he announced the Bush Doctrine. And he said, we will go after the terrorists. Well, of course, that's a no-brainer. Even John Kerry would go after the terrorists and attack us. But he would do much more. He announced his plan and his policy to win the war that he did not start, but he intended to finish. And he intends to win. And what the Bush Doctrine is that we will go after not just the terrorists. We're not just going to lob a few missiles into the desert, like the last Democrat president. We're going to go after the terrorists and give them no refuge, no place to run, no place to hide. And we will get them in whatever states harbors them and supports them. That is a policy to win the war, modeled on Ronald Reagan, the last great amiable dunce in the White House, who understood that there was a global conflict against an evil enemy, and who understood that global communism needed to be met and defeated. And he had a plan to win and a program, and he did. And George Bush is doing the same thing. In a remarkable series of speeches, George Bush has explained that the key to winning this war is not to find the card-carrying members of Al-Qaeda, that global jihadism is just that, global. And you need to attack them wherever they are on their soil, so that there's not another attack on ours. And that the key to winning that war is spreading freedom and liberty and democracy to the Middle East and throughout the Muslim world. And that George Bush has repudiated 60 years of American neglect in the Middle East, where we turned a blind eye. A remarkable speech. His own father's policy. Well, the Democrats and Republicans alike have made mistakes in the area. And in a November 2003 speech, George Bush said the following: 60 years of Western nations excusing and accommodating the lack of freedom in the Middle East did nothing to make us safe. Because in the long run, stability cannot be purchased at the expense of liberty. That's the Bush doctrine that he's put into place to make America safe and to win this war that's been declared on us. Unfortunately for us as American Jews, we have a special concern for Israel. And this policy fits in. And George Bush is the strongest supporter of Israel that America's ever had, bar none. I was in Israel in August, and Shimon Peres told me that the relationship with the U.S. has never been stronger than with George Bush in office. Netanyahu also said that. You'd expect it from him. But Shimon Peres said it as well. How so? Because George Bush understands that there's no moral equivalency. It's not our fault that we were attacked. We were attacked because of who we are, not what we do, not our policies. Same with Israel. There is a moral clarity in George Bush's worldview that John Kerry does not share. George Bush understands there's a right and a wrong, and that as it concerns Israel, Israel's right and the Arabs are wrong. And there'll be peace when the Arabs change their mind. When they stop wanting to destroy Israel, he's laid the blame at the footstep of the Arabs where it belongs. And when they change their policy, there'll be peace. People criticize him. Why don't you bring the parties together? That's what you do to make Mideast peace. What John Kerry wants to do. Who does John Kerry want to bring in to create Mideast peace because Bush isn't doing enough? Well, in his speech of December 2003, John Kerry told us that he'd bring in Jimmy Carter and James Baker. Two names that are anathema to the pro-Israel community. I thought it was a joke the first time I heard that. How could it be that John Kerry, a sophisticated, worldly John Kerry, who understands the world, who's been in the Senate for 20 years, this is not the governor of a border state who's never traveled outside the U.S., some hick who doesn't know what the world's about. This is someone who decides, based on his experience and interest in Israel, that the right way to bring peace to Israel is through Jimmy Carter and James Baker. It's an insult, which he eventually came to understand, and he backed off that speech. And those of you who needed to be reassured, okay, now he gets it, now he understands that Israel is a priority, you could have listened to his speech, his acceptance speech in Boston, where, like every Democrat before him since 1948, surely he would mention the word Israel. Surely he would tell you his plan about how Israel was such an important ally of America. But for the first time since 1948, you didn't hear the word Israel from the Democratic nominee. What does that tell you about where his priorities lie? What he intends to do? What George Bush has done is isolate Yasser Arafat. It's now accepted wisdom. Of course, Arafat is an obstacle to peace. You can't deal with Arafat. It wasn't accepted wisdom when George Bush took office. The single most frequent visitor to the White House of all foreign leaders in the world under President Clinton, was Yasser Arafat. George Bush has invited him exactly 0 times to the White House, and he never will. Because he understands with moral clarity there's not some nebulous cycle of violence going on in Israel. There's Arabs attacking Jews in their discotheques and pizza parlors and while sitting down at Seder tables. And in the spring of 2002, when the world was crying out, as Israel was defending itself and retaking the land that it had given to Arafat in the 90s, George Bush said no. Israel has the right to defend itself, the obligation to defend itself, and it will do it as it sees fit. He did not stop Operation Defensive Shield. In a remarkable June 2002 speech, President Bush laid out what everybody knew: Israel's the Jewish state, and it won't be swamped by Arab refugees changing the character of the state. But George Bush had the clarity to say, what results had the Bush doctrine brought? In Afghanistan, there are elections taking place for the first time. Pakistan, General Musharraf understood that under the Bush doctrine, you're either with us or you're against us. He decided to be with us. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi ended decades of terrorist activity and said, I understand that this president means what he says, and if I want to stay in power, I'm going to have to give up my weapons that may end up in terrorist hands, and that's what he did. In the Philippines, George Bush sent troops to fight the global jihadists, not because they were card-carrying members of Al-Qaeda. The war goes beyond that. And that's what George Bush understands and John Kerry doesn't. In Iraq, George Bush took the information that he had available, understood that there was a grave and gathering danger, understood that Saddam had defied the UN and the world's will for 17 votes of the Security Council, thumbed his nose, and as the Dublin Report made clear this week, the sanctions were in, quote, free fall. Those sanctions weren't going to work. They weren't going to disarm Saddam. And that George Bush, acting on the opinion of every intelligence agency in the world, that Saddam had these weapons and that feeling they could fall into the hands of our enemies to attack us on our soil, he made the tough call to send American troops to battle, to fight over there so that our civilians wouldn't be in danger here. Obviously, it hasn't, the report this week says the weapons weren't there. But we don't have the luxury. John Kerry's not going to have the luxury of deciding later on whether it was right or wrong. He's going to have to make the tough call based on imperfect information. And will John Kerry send troops? The answer is no. What is Kerry's policy on the war? I haven't read today's paper, so I don't know. It could have changed since yesterday. But setting aside his electioneering of the past year, where his policy changes based on the political needs of the day, if you want to know what he's going to do, look at his record for the past 20 years in the Senate. John Kerry has consistently opposed the use of military force and the projection of military power around the world. While Ronald Reagan was winning the global war against communism in the 1980s, John Kerry was opposing him at every turn. In Europe, in Central America, weapons programs. And the most telling case of all, the 1991 war, that John Kerry likes to cite as the appropriate passing of the global test, that we had a grand coalition, which was about 30-some troops, pretty close to what we have now, by the way. But this grand coalition, it had the Europeans, that he so covets their approval. It had the Arab countries. It had Republicans, it had Democrats. Saddam Hussein had nakedly invaded Kuwait and swallowed it whole. Everybody understood that that aggression could not stand. Everybody except John Kerry, who voted against sending troops there. The only circumstance under which John Kerry, you can expect, will send American troops is, as he said in his acceptance speech, if we get hit again. Then he'll take decisive action. Well, no kidding. But George Bush understands 3,000 civilian deaths is enough to get our attention. And we don't need to wait for another attack in order for us to preemptively attack our enemies on their soil. And that's the policy that George Bush has been implementing, and that's what he's done and will continue to do in the next 4 years. Those of us who were at the speech Monday night, the program at Beth Hillel, heard Ed Koch. There may be Democrats here like Ed Koch who are lifelong Democrats who've never voted for a Republican for president. And what Mayor Koch said was he's 80 years old, he's been around the block, he's met all the players, and he says there's no question that he's voting for George Bush in this election because it's about the war. He said our security is at stake and that the American Jewish community must vote for George Bush. Now, he went on to say that only George Bush has the backbone to fight this war and that he felt his own party didn't have it. Now, he tried to assuage the concerns of Democrats who just feel uncomfortable voting for a Republican perhaps for the first time. So his recommendation was, and not mine, but his, is that you vote for Democrats for Congress. Yeah, I'm a proud member of the Republican Jewish Coalition, and I'm happy to discuss all the reasons why you should belong to the Republican Party. But for this election, I'm passing along Ed Koch's suggestion that domestic policy can be made and influenced most by your local Congress persons, senators, and representatives. So vote for them if you need to in order to feel better that you're not abandoning your domestic program. But you must vote for Bush because of foreign policy considerations. And I'll leave you with a separate thought, which is there's no religious obligation to vote one way or the other. God doesn't want Bush or Kerry to win. That I know of. Told me. But I can tell you that there is a supreme Jewish political value, and that's freedom. That is the nature of our narrative. God took us out of Egypt from slavery into freedom. And we don't deserve that freedom just because we're Americans or Jews and fortunate enough to live here. People around the world deserve to live in freedom. George Bush understands that, and by helping to make them free, he will make us safer and win this war.
Senator Kerry, in several speeches, has promised to restart the Middle East peace process by being an honest broker. Senator Kerry has also stated that Yasser Arafat is not a viable partner for peace negotiations. Yet, Arafat remains in firm control of the Arab Palestinian Authority. How does Senator Kerry propose to be an honest broker?
Well, thank you. I think that you can be an honest broker and call cat a cat. Len, in his remarks, said that Bush has isolated Arafat. Well, he's isolated him, and now recently Arafat has been unisolated. Just this week, Bush has released funds destined for the Palestinian Authority, despite the fact that Arafat maintains the reins of power, and the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority is essentially a figurehead. As long as Arafat is in power, there isn't a peace process. There has to be new elections, and even that wouldn't necessarily guarantee it, but it might give it a chance. As Len said, Bush has not invited Arafat to the White House. However, he sent them a very friendly check. It's not the role of the U.S. president to force Israel to the negotiation table, nor to force them away. If Israel finds a credible negotiating partner and wants to go to the negotiation table to speak to them, the United States should be always available to facilitate those negotiations. Right now, such negotiations are not in the offing, but America must maintain its readiness to participate should the occasion arise. I think I have just a little bit more time, so let me get to another point that Len made in his opening remarks. He said that Bush has repudiated 60 years of neglect and turning a blind eye to the Middle East, and the blind eye neglect of democracy in the Middle East. Democracy in the Middle East. If Bush was turning a blind eye to it, what's Saudi Arabia where women can't drive? What's Saudi Arabia but a haven for terrorists when they are hiding terrorists who have been mentioned in the 9/11 report, at least the sections that have been redacted by Bush, and yet the FBI is not allowed to interview them. Afghanistan is having an election today, but it really is a mockery of the democratic process. Cheney in his debate touted the registration rate in Afghanistan, not pointing out that there are whole swaths of Afghanistan where people are afraid to register, compensated by other parts of Afghanistan in which the registration vastly exceeds the adult population. Okay, I think that's probably fine.
Thank you.
Say that the simplest answer is John Kerry can't be an honest broker in the Middle East, and he probably said that in front of an Arab audience, or where he thought the audience would want to hear those words, honest broker. At other times, I imagine he has said the opposite. We know, for example, what Dan mentioned in his opening, that John Kerry has always been consistent on Israel's security fence. In front of an Arab audience on October 17, 2003, he said, Palestinian women traveling on foot were forced to stand in long lines. I know how disheartened Palestinians are by the Israeli government's decision to build this barrier off the Green Line, cutting deep into Palestinian areas. We don't need more barriers to peace. It doesn't sound like a consistent explanation and defense of Israel's fence. And in fact, in front of the Jewish audience in New York, in February of 2004, he said what Dan quoted: Israel's security fence is a legitimate act of self-defense. No nation can stand by while its children are blown up in pizza parlors and on buses. So he cannot and will not be an honest broker because there is no side on the other side of the negotiation.
Thank you, Len. Next question. Len, can you articulate the Bush plan for peace in the Middle East, or name Bush's special representative for Middle East peace?
His plan for peace in the Middle East is to support Israel in her war for survival. Israel's War of Independence, Israel achieved an armistice in 1949 and has yet to achieve a full and final peace with her neighbors. Bush understands that there is not, again, this cycle of violence where nobody's involved, it's just tit for tat for each side, but rather he understands Israel's right and in the right, and that the Arabs, when they collectively come to the table through his plan of democratization and liberty and freedom, that if they're picking up their own garbage and electing their own leaders and coming to forums like this, they're going to have less time to hate the Jews and to spend time plotting and planning to destroy Israel. That is his plan for the Middle East. And as for envoys, he recognizes the futility of sending people when there's no one to talk to. And again, it's now the conventional wisdom. Well, of course Arafat is an obstacle to peace. George Bush made it the conventional wisdom because he understands right from wrong, and his moral clarity that he brings to Israel is the same moral clarity that he brings to the war on terror, the war on global jihadism. And that same benefit that Israel gets, we all get from his leadership.
Well, didn't come up with a spokesman for Mideast policy for the Bush administration. However, in his opening remarks, he took the liberty of naming a couple of people who he thought Kerry might be interested in having represent us on Israel policy. It's actually interesting. I've seen a whole wide variety of characters who have been portrayed as possible Kerry supporters. I believe, in fact, that it was Howard Dean who named Carter and Baker. John Kerry specifically said on Meet the Press when this rumor came out that, in fact, no, these are not credible interlocutors for Israel policy. He has already named Representative Martin Indyk and Mel Levine to be the point people on Israel and Middle East policy. Mel Levine and Martin Indyk, just like John Kerry, have 100% voting records from AIPAC. Their support for Israel, like John Kerry's, is unreproachable.
In meetings with American and Israeli officials, French diplomats have demanded a larger role in future peace negotiations. Israel opposes such a French role due to the strong perceived French bias toward the Arab side. How will Senator Kerry reconcile his promise to stand by Israel and his pledge to increase cooperation with allies that Bush has, quote, pushed away, most notably France?
Well, I guess there's this impression that seeking allies is a source of weakness. But, you know, I think even Bush agrees with Kerry that it's a good thing to have allies. Why is he otherwise touting this so-called coalition of the willing, which has scores of members? But Kerry would never give the European allies a veto over U.S. policy. I mean, perhaps for all his complaining, Bush is just frustrated with his inability to create a real coalition the way that his father did. Kerry has a desire to have allies, but that doesn't mean that Kerry is going to kowtow to them. He seeks allies, but he has said, even at the Democratic National Convention, that when necessary, the United States will act alone. In fact, you know, the way I always put it is that, you know, people say, how are you going to build this coalition without going and bending your will to that of the allies? But let me just say this. If you took George W. Bush, you made a photocopy of him, a complete carbon copy, he had the same intellectual capacities, he had the same opinions, he had the same everything. He just didn't happen to be called George W. Bush. That president, although I still wouldn't vote for him, would be an infinitely better president than George W. Bush. And the reason is, he would still have credibility in the world community. He would not be someone who you've already lied to. If he would go up to somebody and say, we've got to go into Iran, we've tried diplomacy and it didn't work, we have to go there, or we have to go into this country, or we have to get these terrorists out of that area, the people would believe him. Who in this audience would believe George Bush if he said it was absolutely necessary for us to attack another country? Okay, all right. All right, so we'll have a small coalition next time, too.
To address the first question, if John Kerry said on Meet the Press, and if he never said it, that he would look at Carter and Baker, then he was misleading the American people, because on December 3rd, 2003, in front of the Council of Foreign Relations, he said, quote, "There are a handful of uniquely qualified Americans I would consider appointing: President Carter, President Clinton, or in the interest of bipartisanship, James Baker." So it's not a Howard Dean quote, that's a John Kerry. As far as how John Kerry would maintain his support for Israel in the face of allies, I think that's an excellent question and a real concern. John Kerry's entire foreign policy is based on, I'm not Jewish Bush, I speak French, I will ask the French in French to come to Iraq, and even though it's a mistake, it's a diversion, and the wrong place, wrong time, time, and I'll bring our troops home. I'll get our allies to come fight for this mistake. An absurd policy that will never work, but that is his stated policy. The question is, what are our European allies going to ask for in return for their whatever support they're going to give to President Kerry? And the question is, they're going to ask for even-handedness.
Len, the 9/11 Commission report named America's enemy in the current conflict as radical Islamists. Why does your candidate continue to refer to the conflict with the term war on terror that does not name an enemy?
I think he should. And I don't think there's any doubt that George Bush, and he has talked about jihadists, and he has talked about militant Islam. Doesn't do it, I think, as a precaution against his words being twisted. And he doesn't want to portray this as a clash of civilizations, and he doesn't want to tar all of Islam. So I think he's careful not to call it a war on militant Islam, because that'll be clipped, and the headlines will read, Bush declares war on Islam, is my suspicion. On the other hand, I think it's a fair point that he should do more to call it what it is, but I don't think there's any question that George Bush understands that this is not a war on a tactic of terrorism. It is a war against militant Islam. It is a war against jihadism, and his actions explain that. I think being overly cautious is that the answer might not call directly what it is.
I think he's been overly cautious because, in fact, he's already been burned once. When this war began, he called it a crusade. Apparently, he may not remember that crusade might have some historical connotations in certain circles. Len, in his opening remarks, had the thesis, and I think this is your main thesis, that Bush gets it. I don't think Bush gets it. Bush doesn't get that this is a war against jihadists. He took his eye off the ball. He went to Afghanistan, and Kerry supported that. That's a military action he supported. He also supported Iraq. The war in Iraq. But he took the ball. We surrounded the terrorists in Bora Bora. And we offloaded this onto the Pakistanis to do. And the warlords of Afghanistan. And Kerry doesn't mention this, but the real reason that we outsourced this was because we wanted to be able to have people captured by people who have looser standards on torture. Unfortunately, they also had less motivation than we do in capturing these people, and they had less resources and less skill in capturing the leaders of Al-Qaeda. Therefore, they are still at large. And then the big diversion, moving forces out of Afghanistan before true democracy is achieved, before Al-Qaeda is found, and he took the eye off the ball, and there we are in Iraq.
Dan, if Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities, what will Kerry's response be?
Well, first of all, I hope that Kerry will take the initiative in this situation, using military, using first diplomatic means, trying to get inspectors, eventually using military means if necessary. But if Israel, in its judgment, determines that it has to take out the reactor, like it had to do in Iraq, I don't know the year, but 81, okay. Then, just like in that case, the United States will support that action. That to me is clear. Hopefully it won't be necessary. It is definitely in Israel's interest for America to take care of it. However, it's in Israel's interest for it to be done. If no one else should do it, Israel has the right, as everyone said in the debate, Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself. It has the obligation, the moral obligation to defend itself, as any country does.
Benjamin Netanyahu said the same thing, that at the highest levels, Israel is saying to the U.S., you take care of it. And Israel and the Americans are saying the same thing back to Israel. There are certain hopes that Israel will address the problem. But as far as Dan's hopes that Kerry will take on Iran, there's nothing in his history to suggest that he'll do that. If Iran drops a nuclear weapon on us or otherwise attacks us directly, Kerry will respond. But otherwise, based on his history, there's no reason to think that he'll take the necessary action. He'll conclude that it's the wrong war at the wrong place at the wrong time. He won't risk sending an American soldier to die for a mistake. What Dan also said in his prior answer was Kerry has supported the war in Iraq, which is true, I suppose. You could really say anything about Kerry's position on Iraq, and it would be true at one time. But overall, I don't think that's a fair statement to describe his position.
Dan, during the election of 2000, candidate Bush was critical of President Clinton for failing to implement the law that requires the American embassy moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Why is that? And when will he act, or will he act to implement the decision?
I don't know. I think he probably, in my opinion, he should move it. I think it would send another signal, like his June 2002 speech, that Israel is not going away, it's not being defeated, and I think it would be an appropriate signal. And Koch's answer to this question on Monday was, look, America supports Israel in everything. We support Israel up and down the line, and it would be a thumb in the eye to the Arabs to say, not only do we support Israel on every crucial issue, but even on symbolic issues, which this really is, we support Israel. And that in Koch's judgment, Bush is, like every president before him on both sides of the aisle, decided to hold off on moving the embassy until there is an overall peace agreement between Israel and her neighbors. Look, this is not a choice between George Bush and more Klein or Lowenthal Marcus. That's not the other option here. John Kerry is not a member of ZOA, and to suggest that after basing his entire foreign policy on getting Europe and the world's approval on global tests, to suggest that John Kerry is going to move the embassy to Jerusalem under these circumstances, I think is wishful thinking at best. I have a few seconds left. Dan mentioned a mockery of the democratic process in Afghanistan going on now. There were 10 million Afghanis who registered to vote. The fact that there are threats and intimidations and irregularities, we have all that in our democracy, which is a couple hundred years old. So for them to be saying, that it's not a real election or it's a mockery, the democratic process, I think, is
To say that symbolic gestures are meaningless in this context, it shows a lack of understanding of the Arab psyche. John Kerry understood as far back as 1995 when he helped push through Congress the resolution requiring this move, that this was an important gesture. The Arabs hope that they will get Jerusalem. Symbols can inspire hope and they can remove hope. By removing, as long as they have hope, they will struggle to get Jerusalem and they'll settle for nothing less and there will be more terrorism. I'm not saying this is going to end the conflict, but this is an important step to show that as far as Israel is concerned, Jerusalem, or at least the western part, is Israeli. He voted for the law and he supported passing the law in 1995. In 1999, when Clinton failed to act as he should have, as required by the law, he took him to task. And I can tell you that this isn't the popular thing for a Democrat in Massachusetts to do. Bush said that he would do it the day he took office. Well, he could have. The money's been authorized. So you don't have to pass the vote in Congress. All you have to do is sign the thing. And Kerry has taken Bush to task for. He's been consistent since 1995, 1999, 2001. 7 waivers later, every 6 months, Bush says that it's against our vital security interests to move the embassy. I don't think so.
Dan, how will Kerry's administration manage the post-war situation in Iraq, and how will that affect Israel?
Well, part of what's going to happen is how much damage Bush is able to do between now and January. If the situation continues to degenerate from now to January 20th, it may be very, in fact, impossible to have those elections in January. But the broad outline of the scheme, he's already put it into motion. We've got to get a real number, we've got to get a real security force in Iraq. And people are getting killed lining up in front of these police stations. When is the Bush administration going to realize that these lines in front of the police administrations is too tempting of a target? You got these recruits have to be recruited using modern equipment. If necessary, fly them out to Germany or to some other place where they can be protected and safe while they train and concentrate on training and get in there and be effective. The Bush administration has constantly been revising downwards the number of people who are on the street, actual forces positioned and trained to be able to be effective in Iraq. How is this going to affect Israel? Right now, Iran, there are these no-go zones, which are making the United States, the world's greatest power, is impotent in face of these terrorists who have been given this haven in Iraq. If the security situation in Iraq can be controlled, or at least made a little bit more reasonable, then you won't have these havens, this complete anarchy in Iraq, which is a base for terrorists, which is certainly not a good thing for Israel.
The question on the war in Iraq affecting Israel is the response of the Israelis should be telling for us. The overwhelming majority of Israelis support the re-election of George Bush, which should be more specific, of Israeli Jews. Israeli Arabs, I think, aren't so much in favor of George Bush, as American Arabs who supported, Arab Americans supported Bush in the year 2000, and they're not supporting him this year. Why is it? How it affects Israel, Saddam will not be lobbing any more Scud missiles into Israel. Israelis understand that, having been on the front lines. This policy of spreading democracy and freedom, you can find the blueprint of it. Israel's enemies of Jews, talk about the neo-Nabals and that were behind this issue of spreading freedom in the Mideast. It's true. You can read Netanyahu's book from '93, A Place Among the Nations, and that's what it talks about. And that's how Israel will achieve the only way to achieve long-term peace.
Len, the UN members have consistently voted against Israel and increasingly are voting against the United States. Why hasn't President Bush and his administration made any move to move out with the United States out of the United Nations?
I think it's a fair question, and I think in a second Bush administration, he will not spend the energy. Again, he probably wanted to avoid being called a unilateralist. So even though the threat was clear in 2002, Bush went back again to the UN and asked for additional resolutions, which he got passed. But I think the Bush administration is moving more towards coalitions of the willing, that it will use the democracies around the world, those who understand what's at stake, to do what needs to be done. That's where not allowing the UN or any particular ally to have a veto on our foreign policy comes into play. Again, John Kerry is overly focused on getting the approval of certain allies in particular, and certain allies our foreign policy on their approval is not his plan. It's not part of the Bush doctrine. He will do what needs to be done in order to win the war, and he'll bring along whatever coalition members who are willing to join in that.
Same poll, they also said that Clinton was by far, overwhelmingly, the most popular politician in the whole world, according to that poll, among Jewish Israelis. As far as what their opinion of Kerry, if you had a poll right now that picked out there's 100 U.S. senators, there's 120 members of the Knesset. If I picked out a member of the Knesset right now and asked you, would you rather have him or Sharon? At least you know Sharon. You probably don't know the other guy I'm going to mention. And in fact, and I've never denied this, I mean, Len has pointed out occasional supportive things that Bush has done for Israel. And, you know, it's probably a better idea if you have somebody who's, you know, occasionally supportive of you and somebody you don't know anyone at all. You know, why not take the guy who's a known factor? But if the Israelis don't know Bush, don't know Kerry, they're going to find out about him, and I believe, and I'm sure they're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Dan, it appears that many Jews are comfortable with President Bush being supportive of Israel. What concrete steps or statements can we rely upon of Kerry's that will assure us that we can expect the same kind of support or great support from Senator Kerry if he becomes president?
Well, if Kerry isn't a solid supporter of Israel, then he's darn sneaky, because he's been there in the Senate for 20 years pretending to be a strong supporter of Israel. He's been there for of the 100% voting record. He's spoken very strongly. On the other hand, you know, Bush, again, I'm going to quote Len, in May 2002, Bush denounced the right of return for the Arabs. I mean, which is very important. If you really, again, this is something very important. You have to squash this hope. It's a non-starter. If they come in with the right of return, it's either not a democratic state or it's not a Jewish state. There's no two ways about it. On the other hand, and when he met with Sharon, he repeated these promises. Then Sharon returns to Israel, and King Abdullah of Jordan comes. And guess what? The guarantees of rights of return disappeared like that. And he also made promises during the same meeting with Sharon that at least the larger settlements, the most important settlements, the closest ones to Jerusalem, that these settlements would not be subject to negotiation. And I mean, and we can negotiate, we can ask whether that's a good idea or a bad idea or what. But he made the promise, at least for a few days, and then King Abdullah showed up. The real question is, who's a stronger supporter of Israel? It's Kerry. It's John Kerry. His brother is Jewish. His wife was leading the congressional lines for Soviet Jewry. Many of the people here in the Philadelphia area owe their freedom to his wife.
The idea that you vote for the person you know, that Kerry's an unknown in Israel, doesn't hold water, because you all know George Bush, and there are lots of people who are voting against George Bush. You don't just vote for somebody that you know. Very few strong supporters of John Kerry, with the exception of Dan. People who are voting against George Bush, they're not voting for John Kerry. Nobody liked him in the primaries, they just thought that other people would like him. Very little enthusiasm for him. So if the Israelis knew Bush, they wouldn't want him back in because they know him. They want him in because they like his policies. The 100% voting record for John Kerry in Israel, well, it's not so tough to have a 100% voting record as a U.S. Senator. Massachusetts, there's not this huge Arab lobby that's going to punish you with your votes if you support Israel. The question is, when the going gets tough, and you have pressure brought on you not just by voters of Massachusetts, but by the European allies upon which you base your entire record, what are you going to do then? Are you going to stand up for Israel at crunch time? And the record doesn't support that.
Len, if the Bush doctrine regarding the Middle East, specifically Israel, has been so successful, how do you explain the recent attacks in Taba? Those attacks were one of the most complex, well-planned, most carefully executed terrorist attacks since 9/11.
I don't pretend to say that the war is over and that it's won. What I do say is that George Bush has a policy that will win if it is implemented. The Mideast peace, Israel is not at peace. The question is, what's the next American president going to do? Either he's going to call Jimmy Carter and James Baker and send them to Israel to knock heads, or he's going to continue the policy of making a moral difference, of understanding the difference between the parties, and he's going to support Israel. When will there be peace in Israel? I can't say. That's not up to us. All Jews can do and Israelis can do, say Jews because it's been true since before the creation of the state. They've come home to reclaim their land after 1,900 years of exile. Miraculous story that we're privileged to live in these times where we can support our government, the most powerful country in the world, and that we're in the unique position to influence our politicians to do whatever we can to support the return of Jewish sovereignty to Israel. Whether there will be peace depends on our enemies, not on the Israelis, not on the Americans. Israelis have been ready for peace since before the creation of the state, and they're ready now. So the fact that there are terrorist attacks now doesn't mean that Jewish policy or Israel's policies have failed.
The Bush-Cheney administration is failing to see the sources of terrorism in Israel. The vice presidential debate, Cheney touted the war in Iraq for having reduced the number of deaths in Israel. Well, I downloaded the monthly casualty figures in this whole intifada business. It's clear that the war in Iraq didn't make a blip on the deaths in Israel. People, if they weren't getting money from Hussein to do this, they were doing it out of their own conviction, or getting money from Saudi Arabia, which has actually a fair bit more than Iran. The recent decline in violence in Israel is, in terms of its timing, and just in terms of the logic, can be credited solely to the security fence, which had line sections completed early towards the beginning of this year. He's turned a blind eye towards support for terrorism in Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Iran because of this fixation on Iraq.
Dan, wasn't Saddam an enemy of Israel, and isn't it a good thing that Bush removed him?
He wasn't. He was no friend of the Jews. And but the question is, and this is what we mean by a global test. A global test is global priorities. You figure out what's the most important thing to be done. What is the number one threat to Israel? It's Iran. They if they may have nuclear weapons, if not, by their own admission, they're enriching plutonium that they're going to have if we don't take more action than we are right now. There are now 2 missiles in southern Lebanon. If they're equipped with nuclear missiles, I hate to see what's going to happen to Israel. They might even be moved to Gaza for all I know. What's the number 2 threat to Israel? It's North Korea. North Korea's number of weapons has exploded. Now, admittedly, Adi, they're not going to attack Israel directly. They're not going to attack Israel directly. Why did they create this nuclear weapon program? It's in order to get some money, to get themselves out of their abject poverty. But we're not sitting at the negotiation table with them like we should, taking this problem seriously. I'm not saying to kowtow to them, but at least let's implicate ourselves. Well, without a credible American partner, eventually somebody in the terrorist camp is going to turn to them with some money. And they're going to get their hands on these North Korean weapons. And then either New York or Tel Aviv or some capital somewhere in the world is going to be devastated by a briefcase nuclear weapon. And that's the main threat to Saddam Hussein may have had weapons of mass destruction. Kerry was right to authorize the threat of force to force in those inspectors. But they got in there, they didn't find anything, and that's the end of the story.
Bush is criticized for taking unilateral action. Bush is criticized for taking multilateral action. It involves the rest of the world to try and keep North Korea and Iran in a box, to try and prevent them from breaking out and proliferating nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. That box was falling apart in Iraq. Iraq was a unique situation. Iran had not used weapons of mass destruction on its own people or others, has not fired on Israel. North Korea hasn't done that either. Bush has named them as among the axis of evil, and that is obviously paying close attention. Iraq was in a different category because of the history of Saddam. And again, based on the information that he had at the time, he had to make the tough call to pull the trigger. A couple other points. The idea of voting against someone. I voted against Bush Sr. I voted against Bob Dole in the 90s because of their raising taxes. Bush as well changed. Bush Sr. changing his policy, mostly because of the undue pressure that he brought to Israel. That should be our top priority: national security in Israel. And in this election, the same candidate is better on both.
Representatives and your candidates, that was the last question we have time for. You each are going to have 5 minutes to present a wrap-up. Let me just briefly tell you some other areas the audience is interested in. You can address this or not. One is about the conditions of the roadmap to declare a Palestinian state. They're required the absolute end of terrorism, dismantling terrorist states. Why hasn't that happened? Why haven't we demanded it? Why has President Bush cut Israel's loan fund for the money spent in the security spend? And if Bush and Cheney's dream of democratizing the Arabs fail, is it voted for Bush gambling with Israel's security? So you're going to have 5 minutes now. Please listen, and then this will continue.
I've spoken quite a bit about Kerry and Israel, and I'll continue to put information, including references on the points I made this morning on my website, so you can make a more informed decision in November. But I would like to conclude by letting you hear the words of Kerry himself from his article, An Unwavering Commitment to Reforming the Middle East, which appeared recently in the foreword. Kerry's words. Across the Middle East, the United States and Israel are facing a range of crucial security challenges. We are not secure while Saudi donors fund terror, and while Iran pursues a nuclear weapons program, and while Syria pursues terrorist operations. We are not secure while Iraq is at risk of becoming a haven for terrorists. And we are not secure while Israel, the one democracy in the region, remains a victim of unrelenting campaign of terror. If we continue without a more effective strategy, we are not supporting our allies as best we can. For too long, America has not led, and Iran's program has advanced. Let me say it plainly. A nuclear-armed Iran is unacceptable. I believe we must work with our allies to end Iran's nuclear weapons program and be ready to work with them to implement a range of tougher measures if needed. Developing an international coalition enhances our influence by ensuring that all nations are united in the efforts. leaving no room for Iran to play allies against each other. The Syria Accountability Act, which I co-sponsored in the Senate, gave the president the authority to sanction Syria, a concrete step against Syria's support for terror and its occupation of Lebanon. As president, I will never delay implementing sanctions, as the Bush administration did for many months. The greatest long-term strategic threat to U.S.-Israeli relations is the U.S. dependence on Middle East oil. If we are serious about energy independence, then we can finally be serious about confronting the role of Saudi Arabia in financing and in providing ideological backing for Islamic fundamentalist jihadists. This is a problem that this administration has ignored and one that must be addressed. I want an America that relies on its own ingenuity and innovation and not the Saudi royal family. I will work with the United Nations and allies to bolster security in Iraq so that we can meet our goals for elections and speed up reconstruction. I will launch a massive effort to train and equip Saudi security forces so that they can take over the security of their nation, allowing us to draw down the troops in an orderly manner. American leadership is needed to bolster Israeli security at home as well as in the region. The success of the withdrawal from Gaza also requires a real Palestinian effort to establish security so that Gaza does not remain a haven for terrorist attacks on Israel. Experience has made it very clear. For the Palestinians to meet this key test, new Palestinian leadership is required, as Yasser Arafat has proven himself not to be a partner for peace. My commitment to a safe and Jewish state is unwavering. For 19 years, this is a pledge I have kept in the United States Senate, whether through my votes on economic aid, military security, or the location of the U.S. Embassy. It is one I will continue to keep as I lead a bold new effort to enhance regional security throughout the Middle East. Thank you very much. I look forward to continuing our conversation afterwards, and I hope that you all join me in supporting John Kerry and John Edwards as our new president and vice president on November 2nd. Thank you very much.
Every 4 years you hear this is the most important election of our life. Maybe it's true. I don't know. But it is the most important election of our life. Ed Koch said so. He's 80 years old. And there is a single issue that has two manifestations for American Jews, and that is leadership in this war. And support, continued support for Israel. I said I would say a moment about the Republicans and why that should be your home, and the question didn't come up, so let me take a minute now. I did go with Congressman Jim Gerlach to Israel in August. He gets it too. He calls it a fight of barbarism versus civilization. Again, doesn't want to tar all Muslims. He agrees with Daniel Pipes, who says Islam is the problem and moderate Islam is the solution. We need to bring the Muslim world into the modern world and make them understand that they should have better things to do with their life and time than to figure out how to American Jews. Jim Gerlach is voted running in the 6th congressional district. Those of you in his district, I urge you to vote for him. I spent a lot of hours with him. He's a very bright guy. I wholeheartedly support his candidacy as well. We've got a table for the Republican Jewish Coalition set over there in case there's anyone here who's never heard of the organization or that there was such a thing as Jewish Republicans. There are. We're here. And we're growing. The polls all show that younger generations of American Jews do not have it inculcated in our DNA the way our parents and grandparents did, that the Democratic Party is the only place for Jews. It's not. The Republican Party morality-based foreign policy as well as domestic policy is in line with Jewish values, again, on domestic front, but in this election is all about national security, international policy, and support for Israel. And on all fronts, who is it that you see with rock solid support for Israel? Senator Brownback, Senator Loed, all the names that have mentioned. Civil front, perhaps. Who is it that you see speaking at the Democratic Convention? Sharp, Jackson, Kucinich. No friends of Israel. That on the crucial issues of the day, the Republican Party is right on keeping us safe and on winning this war. Finish by asking you to join me in supporting President Bush. He has earned the vote of the American Jewish community. If we do not support him now for the most pro-Israel American president, how can we lay claim to any future American president on either side? The Democrats will take us for granted, and the Republicans will say, like James Baker did, forget the Jews, they don't vote for us anyway. The Republicans have earned our vote, and I urge the American Jewish community to give it to them wholeheartedly.
It's not wireless. Okay, Rabbi's going to lead us in a beer contest in about 1 minute. I just want to thank our speakers. It was very educational.
Jonathan.
Now, what's your real name?
Benjamin.
Benjamin?
Yeah.
What's your full name?
Benjamin Loeb.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Kerry. Who's Kerry?
Gonna be a president.
He's going to be? Uh-huh.
He's gonna try to be a president.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to be president?
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Bush.
Bush?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Who's helping them? Does Bush have a friend?
Yeah.
Why do they want to be president, both?
I don't know.
Okay.
Uh-huh. What's Bush's friend's name? The vice president.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. And who do you think should be president?
Kerry.
Why?
Because he's nice.
What did he do that's so nice?
Because we're voting for Kerry.
That's right. Okay. What about Bush? Is he nice?
No.
No.
Why?
not?
Because he says some stuff are not real.
Oh, like what?
Like picking his nose.
He's picking his nose.
No. But stuff like.
Like that. Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
And how about the Democrats and the Republicans? You know something about that?
Yeah. Kerry's a Democrat and Bush is a Republican.
Uh-huh. Okay. Do you know any other Republicans?
No, but I know some more. The Democrats.
Oh, who?
Benjamin's mom, and Benjamin's, Benjamin's mom, and Benjamin's dad. I mean you, Mom.
Okay, that's very good. And what does the president do?
Talk.
There's a lot of talking?
Yeah.
Like your teacher?
Yeah.
And Benjamin, how does somebody become president? What do you have to do to become a president if you want to?
If you have to win more points than the other person.
Where do you get the points?
You have to do stuff
Like what?
like doing a debate.
A debate?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what do they do in a debate?
You, the person asks questions and you answer. You have to say the stuff are true.
Uh-huh. Like what kind of question?
Like, he says, how we play, hit and run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And you have to answer.
Right. You have to be really smart to answer
How
this
much
question.
points I got?
A lot of points, I think.
How much?
Do you want to be president?
No,
Why not?
because, I know I'll lose the debate. This
Well,
is
maybe
it's a 1 minute answer.
You only have 1 minute to get the answer?
Yeah.
Well, maybe when you're big, you'll be able to win.
That is the debate. Okay, I will do the debate.
Okay. Is that it?
All right. Is there something else you want to say to Grandma? I mean, about...
So now
Well,
say
who should
what-
grandma?
Say a question.
Oh, you like questions better?
Say a question, Dad.
He wants you.
Okay. Okay. So, do people have to vote for president?
Yeah.
How do you vote?
Right.
You write? What do you write?
Who you want to vote for?
So, who should grandma vote for?
Kerry.
Yeah. Okay. And grandpa?
Kerry.
But won't Bush be sad if nobody votes for him?
All right. Well, I think...
Say a question.
Okay, now I'm going to give Jonathan a turn. Do you take your
Okay.
places?
And then after his turn, it's my turn again.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Good.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. What's your name?
My name is Jonathan Loeb.
Okay. And can you tell us who Kerry is?
Kerry, he's right now he's senator. He's been senator for 20 years, and he's trying to be president. He's one of the candidates for president.
And who's another candidate?
Ralph Nader and George W. Bush.
Okay. And who are their running mates?
I don't know Ralph Nader's. I know that Bush, George W. Bush, is with Dick Cheney. And Ashcroft and Rumsfeld and someone else too, some other people I don't know there.
And what about Kerry? Is anybody with him?
Yeah.
Who?
Well, there's also John Edwards.
Okay.
And for senator, there's Huffle, and there's also some other stuff that I don't know. Louis Murphy for Congress.
Okay. Now, how do you get to be president?
You need to have, there's an election and everybody votes, and the one who has the most electoral college votes wins. You could be president and still get less votes, which is very interesting.
Okay, and who do you think people should vote for?
I think they should vote for Kerry. Because I think, in my opinion, what he thinks about America is better.
What does he think about America?
Well, for example, Bush, he wants tax cuts, but I don't think, but Kerry doesn't think tax cuts are, Bush wants tax cuts, but Kerry doesn't think tax cuts are good, because if you pay less taxes, then the poor people, they get poorer because they get less money because some tax goes to the poor, and the rich, they get richer. So it's really unfair. And Kerry thinks that's wrong. And Kerry has, I think Kerry has some better ideas about what to do with Israel.
Where were you this morning?
I was watching you do the debate against Len Feldman.
And what were some of the things we talked about?
You talked about like who's better for Israel.
And who do you think's better?
I think that Kerry's better because Kerry's the real deal.
So what, I mean, was there something interesting? Like one question that was interesting this morning? Do you remember?
Not really in particular.
Who do you think did better at the debate? Your dad or Len?
Definitely Dad.
Why?
Because he talked better and said the better things.
All right.
What were one of the things I said?
Well, you said that Bush said that Israel should freeze under settlement construction. And he also said you said that Bush signed papers so that way you could bring guns into churches and synagogues, and also he signed another one so that way there's Jesus Day in Texas.
So you are listening, huh?
Yeah.
And you said he talked better. What does it mean he talked better?
Like he talked with more expression. Instead of saying Bush is bad, he was like, Bush is bad.
Let's see, what else? And do you know any Republicans?
Yeah, I know lots of Republicans. Like Brock's dad, Brock's mom, Miles and Beth Ladenheim. Also, Bush is a Republican. Dick Cheney, Ashcroft, Rumsfeld.
Do you sometimes talk with your friend, like Brock, let's say?
Yeah, we have lots of fights about who's better.
Like,
I usually win because he says random comments. Like once I showed him a picture with Bush holding holding the hand of the I forget what it's called, Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, country against Israel, and he said that he's not real, and he was just holding, and the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia was, instead of having a beard, he had a pom-pom on his chin. See, he says random comments like that.
he says random comments. So you think you have better arguments?
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay, well, that's good.
Okay.
Can I see myself?
No. Jonathan, anything else related to this morning debate?
Lots of stuff, not really.
Well, just remember one more thing you have to say about this morning's debate.
It was exciting. Dad did so much better.
Okay.
My turn.
Well, that's good.
Can I see myself? It's my turn. It's my turn, Mom. Mom, no, you already had a turn. Let's see ourselves.
All right, I think we might do a pause.
Huh?
Come back, yeah. He's still recording. Stop. Okay, stop.
Abby! Don't look at yourself. Look at the camera.
Don't together.
Okay. All right. Hello. What's your name?
Gabby, I think.
Okay. Who's running for president?
Kerry and Bush.
I think she knows the easy answer.
Okay, we're gonna start with the easy. All right.
All right.
And who do you support for president?
Kerry?
Why?
Because Bush cares only about giving tax cuts to the really rich people. He says a lot of stupid things, like the future will be better tomorrow, or soon the human race will enter the solar system. And also, he went into the wrong country. He went into Iraq instead of focusing on Afghanistan, and he still hasn't found Osama bin Laden.
Okay. Now, what? So this morning you were at the debate?
Yes.
Okay. What was that all about?
That was all about my dad debating, debating Len as the Democrat speaker, and he was representing Kerry.
Okay. And what was Len's argument?
Len's argument was that Kerry doesn't understand that we're at war, even though he actually was in the army, but he didn't say that part. And he said Bush understands that we're at war, and he said that we need Bush to feel safe.
Right. And what did I say?
You said that wasn't true because Kerry can keep us safe too. And you answered a bunch of the questions, and you gave a couple of occasions that Bush was bad for Israel.
So, let's see,
You then.
hi there. And, and who are their running mates?
John Edwards and Cheney.
So do you think your dad had a good answer this morning? Like, you know, did he mark points against Len?
Yes, I think so, especially with the UN, when someone asked him if the US should quit the UN because they're not very good supporters to Israel. And Len said, I don't know, he didn't really give a good answer. And my dad said that, of course, we shouldn't give veto power, and we should stay there and make sure they don't do anything bad for Israel.
Yeah, that was good. So anything else?
No.
Did people like clap, or were they at some point?
Yeah,
Or?
at the end, and the beginning, after the opening and closing remarks.
Yeah. Do you think there were more Democrats or more Republicans in the room?
Definitely more Democrats.
How do you